Hello, I hope everybody's doing good. I just wanted to talk briefly about a picture that I've seen floating around on Facebook, and this gives me an opportunity to talk about Jesus. So, anyway, I've seen this picture floating around, and it looks something like this. I've just drawn a quick little drawing. You see a hand reaching out to just touch the tassels. And what I've seen, or what I know, is that this is referring to a story about a woman who had an issue of bleeding for 12 years, and she sees Jesus coming through, and she knows, if I just touch his cloak, I'll be healed. So this particular version in Mark says this: a large crowd followed and pressed around him, talking about Jesus. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. And when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and she touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding had stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that the power had gone out from him, and he turned around and he asked the crowd, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding around you," his disciples answered, "and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, and told him the whole truth. The reason why she was trembling is because Jesus was born into a world where women were held without value. Jesus was born into a world that held women at no value. Women were, they would say, women are responsible for sin coming into the world. There was some guy named Ben Sirah. He was a scholar in the 2nd century, and he spread this throughout the churches, saying that women were without value. They had no value, that they were dishonest. You can't trust a woman. Yeah, so Jesus was born into this era where women were treated as they had no value. Well, okay, so there's one thing against women. The other thing against this poor girl is that she's unclean because she's had an issue of bleeding for 12 years. And so what that means for her is that she has been isolated for 12 years. She hasn't had any kind of companionship. She would likely have to depend on alms or um, um, charity from others to be able to eat, to be able to pay her bills. Um, for 12 years, she's been considered unclean. So she's very brave to come even into the crowd, because legally they could stone her to death because she was unclean, which makes all these other people unclean. But it's not so with Jesus. So Jesus sees the woman, and she comes trembling before him. And he says to her, "Take heart, daughter. Your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." Isn't this beautiful? That Jesus takes women in their shame and raises them up and restores their dignity. It's just beautiful. There is a connection in the Old Testament. So back in Malachi, in the modern English version, it says, Malachi 4:2 says, "But for you who revere my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its rays." Now in the King James Version, it said, the Old English Version, it says, "But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings." Okay, so here's the connection. In those days, the rabbis and the priests would wear these prayer shawls, and they had these tassels on the bottom, like something similar to this. So they have these shawls and they have these tassels on the bottom, and they would hold them up like wings, and the children would sing under their wings. There's a verse in Psalm 63. Let me read it out of the King James Version. It says, "Because thou hast been my help, therefore in the shadow of thy wings I will rejoice." And then in the modern English version, it says it this way: "Because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings." That's what they're talking about here, the shadow of your wings. And that's what that woman reached out to touch, was the tassel of his wings. He is the Son of Righteousness who has risen with healing in his wings. It's really a beautiful story of how Jesus treated women who were otherwise treated with contempt, how he took them in from that place of shame and lifted them up and restored their dignity. I learned this in a Bible study this past fall. Kristi McLelland teaches a series called Jesus and Women. And it was a really awesome story. If you are interested at all, you could look up Kristi McLelland, Jesus and Women. There's a lot of other stories in there about how he treated women. The story about the woman who was crying at his feet and washing his feet with her tears and drying his feet with her hair. The woman at the well. She was a Samaritan and he was a Jew, and they shouldn't have even been talking to each other according to the customs and of the day. So it just is a beautiful series on how Jesus treated women. So I wanted to show you the connection. So if you guys see this picture on Facebook, that's what it's referring to. I hope that you learned something today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day.